Hi, and welcome to Yeshiva Shem Ve'aver. I'm Rabbi David Katz, and you are here listening live or the download, whatever it may be, for Parashas Vayechi. Closing out the book of Genesis, we're going into the book of Exodus. The name of the article is The Redemption of the Ger. Might sound like a familiar topic. Maybe we even used it before. But this angle is certainly a new angle and more enlightening than if you've heard me use this term before. I would say that this is the essence of the term redemption of the Ger and where it comes from. Just to make one point clear, we did not start with Genesis, because the cycle, due to whatever, the establishment of Yeshiva Shem Ve'aver, I think our first class was Parshas Mishpatim. So pay attention that the Yeshiva Shem Ve'aver cycle, whatever it is, will have a complete set of commentary of the Parsha by the close of Jethro. What we're going to do with that, I don't know. But I guess for anyone who wants to do backlog work, you will be able to find the entire Torah with this kind of framework on file on the Yeshiva blog, SoulMazal.blogspot.com. So you'll be able to find every parsha with commentary. We're not going to stop. It's just you now have a complete body of work. So, what we do from Mishpatim onwards, I'm really not sure. So probably just more of the same, but that needs to be said. The protocol that we operate under is going with the Haftorah with an introduction to find consistency in the Parsha. A little bit of spice and dazzle from the Zohar, and onwards into the article and the Parsha. Let's go. Parashas Vayechi, Redemption of the Ger, and we are giving a special thanks to this class for the rabbi who lived in the early 18th century, the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato. He's buried in Tiberias, not far from here. He is the one who coined the phrase, as far as I'm concerned, maybe somebody else gave it before him, but he's on record in his commentary on Ruth for saying that there is a concept of the redemption of the Ger. He gets it obviously from Boaz and Ruth. The Haftorah. The Haftorah is, we come on to King David, signing off the rest of his life, giving the kingdom over to Solomon. A couple points of interest. In the Haftorah, there's a very nice gematria. Sometimes gematrias just naturally work with little effort. The last two words of the Haftorah, Malchuso Moyoid, the kingdom greatly, in context, was prepared, is the gematria Yisrael, 541. Just fits very, very nice. The reason why I bring this up in particular is because our parsha, as much as David represents Jacob and the blessing to the son, gematria does play a big part in putting this piece together. So the fact that we have a very nice gematria in the Haftorah just, again, kind of resonates with where the parsha is going. It's not my find in the Haftorah, in the parsha. Haftorah, I found it, but in the parsha, it's a famous gematria. So it would make sense that the flavor of intellect through the Haftorah, through the prophecies, should have gematria in them, since the parsha is a hotbed of basically prophetic gematria. King David charges Solomon to be a man. And in a lot of ways, that really is what the Torah is about. Being a proper man, a man of God. I think most ego and the serpent and idolatry, for largely, if not entirely, and false religions and false pretexts in religions and false doctrines, is the idolization and idolatry of man. Now, obvious things aside, the idea of a false reality on any level is a false impression of man. And this extends itself well beyond the religious realm. Even your own ego, that you see yourself as, man, woman, as, man, like in Bereshit, man, male and female, he created them, they are man. Any false image you have of yourself is idolatrous. Now, does that mean you're going to be killed? No. What it means is you have an ego, you have an Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination, and it will kill you one day. That is the nature of mankind. Going back from Adam until the Messiah comes, cleans up the mess, and we live eternally with God in Olam Haba, the world to come. Until that time, you are going to have ego, you're going to have a little bit of evil in you, you're going to do things wrong and against God. That's mankind. But the question is, even if we succumb to this, why do we succumb to this? And the answer is, your impression of man is wrong. Why? Because how do we know what the ideal man is? How do we know? And that's what this whole Parsha article is about. Is everyone's measuring up, I'm a better man than you, even your God's a better God than mine, and even if we believe in the same God. But your impression of God might not fit mine, and vice versa. And we're going to argue about it. We might not even know that we're arguing about it. You shouldn't give charity on Wednesdays. Why not? I like to give charity on Wednesdays. What's wrong? Well, that's kind of like your God versus my God, which is really saying me versus you. And I know God better than you, so what does that make you? And then you have a contest and a competition. I'm better. I mean, this is mankind. So King David is saying to Solomon, look, be a man. Use your wisdom. Understand reality of mankind. Know what people are. Know what nations are. People, Jews, Gerim, Nachrim, Akum, you name it. Know everybody. Know what's going on. Know man. Know God. Know reality. Know yourself. Know your evil inclination. That's the charge King David gives King Solomon. In the end, he says, by the way, Ben Gera, take him out. He was ill-willed by me, and I want you to take him out. Now, that idea is really one of the themes again of the article and the parsha. Just to give a bit of background about what it is to be this man thing and the evil inclination. Esav wants to kill Yaakov, Jacob, Esav hates Jacob. And all the mythological perspectives will say Esav was bloodthirsty and he wanted to kill him with an axe. And I think he started Halloween 5. All right, but I think the deeper impression is, again, it goes back to this evil inclination thing. Everybody has an evil inclination. And as the Zohar points out, it's actually an angel. It's embedded in your soul. Kind of like an escort. You also have a good inclination. Fret not. Now, the evil inclination, when God tells him to take you, he will take you. At that time, God has given up on you in this lifetime, and your day of judgment beckons, and hopefully your access to Garden of Eden beckons, and hopefully you did good, you're cleaned up, everything goes according to plan. But the evil inclination's job is to urge you on, to give you some friction in this world, to get you to try to be interested in finding God. Friction is not bad. The sand in the oyster or whatever it is makes the pearl. Now, don't love the sand. Don't fall in love with the sand. Have a little bit of context. But at the end of the day, when you just have had enough, you basically were not strong enough to defeat death. Now, again, who is other than like the 7 people that walked into the Garden of Eden alive? And even they did not have the power to remove the serpent from this world. So again, mankind is just in this category. Now, your evil inclination right now is with you. Imagine that. Right now, he's being held back by God. That if God would say, get him, you're done. And we are to go to war with that. Now, by understanding that he's being held back, makes it a little bit more accessible to imagine I have a chance. You know, when Dad plays basketball with little Johnny, and he's 5 years old, Dad is not looking to stuff Johnny like LeBron James, hacking down a shot in a basketball game. Maybe Johnny can win because Dad lets him. And that's kind of like what's going on here. I used to spar in Taekwondo when I was a teenager. And I remember there was a kid who was really good. He was, I think I must have been about 19, and he was 10. Now, obviously, I could have just, creamed the kid. But, again, I'm playing the father figure type. He's the kid, and he beat me. I let him win. But the point is, he earned it. He really earned it. And I think that's the idea with the Yetzer Hara. He can take you out. God says, get him. It's over. But God is looking for the engagement. Just like Jacob with the angel. That's what that battle was. Jacob is wrestling the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, and that is the angel of Esav. Right? We're looking for the big, this is this angel, and it's the angel of... No, it is the Yetzer Hara. It is the evil inclination that is, by definition, the angel of Esav. Now, what's interesting, what do you mean that Esav wants to kill Yaakov? What do you mean that Esav wants to kill Jacob? Jacob annoys the evil inclination of Esav. Now, Esav's evil inclination does not have permission to kill himself, but it doesn't mean he doesn't have permission to kill Jacob. Now, let's say me and Plony. Plony's evil inclination does not have permission to kill Plony, but I really, really, really annoy Plony's evil inclination. That evil inclination wants to kill me. And for whatever reason, by Mazal, my name, I keep walking into Plony. My life's in danger. My life is in danger. That's what it means. Esav wants to kill Jacob. It's the Yetzer. Now, by that definition, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, it is the ego, it is the serpent, it's the Samech Mem, it's the Sitra Achra, the other side. It's all these evil things. Now, it might not kill you, but it might lead you astray. It might say, hey, let's go kill some people in this genre, or this caste system. Now, I say kill, we're talking spiritual generally. So you say, you fall victim to it. Now, we're not saying it says go out and kill and murder and steal. Maybe it says, instead of being a superb individual, be okay. Just be average. It's easier that way. Who cares? If you steal a little bit, the guy's not a good guy anyways. He steals from everybody. So weasels you in there. One little brick at a time. Next thing you know, you're an average human being. And you're with average people, which means everyone got there by evil. By the lack of excellence. By definition, you have ego. By definition, you have evil inclination. And now, it's dangerous. And that's the world we live in. It's dangerous out there. People want to step on you to get ahead. They're thinking for themselves. It's selfish. Fend for the survival of the fittest. We know how it is. And again, okay, that all things equal. But now it means your perspective of reality is warped. Right? Plony at the office, he's a nice guy. But that's the Yetzer Hara. He looks nice. You look nice. But your Yetzer wants to kill somebody. And theirs wants to get you. And we know how this is. Over my dead body, if he gets the promotion from me. We're savage. That is the nature of the evil inclination in mankind. But the real problem is It warps our definition of self, of mankind, of reality, and ultimately how God works with us. So it might not ever come to fruition that it becomes savage. We may get along, but you know what? You don't sleep well at night. You might be, nervous to wake up and go confront your boss tomorrow. Now, he might not have, a hammer to your head, but he might make life miserable. He might put you in the proverbial corner and time out. And that's worse than death. You might have bills to pay, and they don't pay you on time. Who wants these things? Jerry Seinfeld made a joke. The two biggest fears in the world are public speaking and death. And public speaking was greater than death. That means you would rather be the guy in the box than giving the eulogy. Well, that was his joke, but it's actually kind of serious. King David says to Solomon, keep the Torah, keep the statutes, i.e., understand basic morality. You might know that as the 7 laws of Noah. This goes for, what, just non-Jews? Try all of mankind universal. All mankind universal. Because King David prophecies in Psalms, you want to know how you win in Gog and Magog? You want to know how you defeat evil and the ego and the Yetzer and the Asavs and the Amaleks and the snakes and the this and the that? The 7 laws of Noah from the side of judgment turn into mercy, from bad to good, to Hashem Elohim, to Shem Havaya, all these reversals, bad guy, good guy, God got me, God delivered me, all these reversals. That's the real Torah. Those are the statutes that you are to know. That's what will make you a man. That is the essence of what David gives over. And he says to Ben Gera, he says, he tried to get me. And you know what? It's not him. He was just being the Sutton, the one who overextends his boundary to kill for the sake of God trying to rattle my cage. And you know what I'm going to do, says David? Nothing. I know I'm good. He can't do anything. And in the end, David was right. But you know what? You shouldn't have been a player for evil. And I'm going to get you in the end. And he charges Solomon to do it. That's the basic premise of the Haftorah. Okay, onwards into the Zohar. A couple things before I get to the big grand finale of where we're going to go into the Parsha. There's a really nice concept here. Reuven's blessings and the blessings of Jacob and Moses. It looks like Reuven is out. Right? Doesn't get any love. So there's actually the concept of Reuven is the real firstborn, which literally he was. He may have lost it to this one or that one. Reuven is the firstborn. In the whole world, in the end of days, the state of Israel, 1948, making Gerim, here we are. The Zohar says, you know what it comes down to? It comes down to B'nai Reuven. There's the people that serve God through the land of Israel in the end of days, they will make wars around the world. This is how Israel survives, literally. And there are those, let's say, they're not Jewish, they're Jewish. Right? You've heard me say this before. Not Jews, but Jewish. Israelite-ish. More like those that belong to Sinai. And they're the ones that are supporting the redemption, are making themselves a chariot for the redemption. Now, at the same time, that's, let's say, the blessed hand. Now, there's the anti-blessed hand. Those that are jealous of the blessing and want to breach their boundary, take more than they're worth, and take theirs, this and that. That is the other, let's say, B'nai Reuven, the anti-Reuven. Erev Rav, the evil sector. And these are the wars, if there are wars, so to speak, of Gog and Magog and of days, maybe not machine guns, but the strife and the struggle, the tug of war over the land of Israel, which the land of Israel is always in a tug of war. Notice Abraham and the 4 kings, that's what Israel is. You want a peace deal here? Not happening. Israel is at a state of war. It's like they say, the problem with Bigfoot is not the photographer's fault. Bigfoot is just blurry. All right, Israel is not a war-torn country. It is just war-torn. Israel is at war. That's what it is. Everyone comes through here. All perspectives come through here. That's how King David saw the world. That's how King David became a man. And that was how King Solomon wanted to push the ger throughout the world. Because Israel is the place to make it possible. So speaking a little bit of political terms, when they throw the Jews back in the land in 1948 and hope for, let's say, New World Order and a Amalekite state with the anti-Bnei Reuven, lo and behold, it becomes successful from the pro-holy Bnei Reuven, and more importantly, what erupts in the land? The ger. Rabbi Schwartz wants to make a Beis Din of Gerim. Here we are teaching about Gerim. Eventually, Israel's going to be promoting Gerim. How did that happen? The blessing of Bnei Reuven to make wars on the world of the nations that are suppressing Israel. What does it mean to suppress Israel? If you are making blurry the 7 laws, do your 7 go to heaven, don't do anything else, you have no relationship with God, you don't deserve God, you don't deserve this, you don't deserve that. It's like clipping a bird's wings. You didn't chop his head off. But isn't it pretty bad to clip the wings, so to speak? I mean, the difference is between being in your cage and flying around the world. So the proverbial wing clipping here are the 7 laws in perversion. When you pervert those 7 laws, wings are clipped. When you thrive with the 7 laws. And I'm not talking do your 7 go to heaven. I'm not talking non-Jews in face of Jews or this and that. Worldwide morality, worldwide octane to make Torah work. On both sides, all universal mankind. The wings must be full. If they're clipped, Israel's clipped, the world's clipped. And the so-called nations, they're really the Erev Rav that don't even appreciate or recognize Sinai. Therefore, the holy Bnei Reuven or messianic proper movement, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, whatever you want to call redemption, Kol HaTorah, is to make war against those in perversion of the 7 laws of Noah. That's King David's Psalms, that's the Zohar, and that's really the only tangible place of attack we have today. Look, Snowden with his NSA stuff, he's going to get, what's coming to him. I mean, what are you going to do, whip out an AK-47 and erupt on a so-called Amalekite? And we're talking about the Yetzer Hara here. It's not this battle of bloodshed. It's a spiritual domain. So if it's a spiritual domain, where do you actually take it out in the spiritual arena? 7 laws of Noah. Why? Because everyone shows up. Everyone's ready to go. Everyone's ready to do it. And it's like part of the world. You can argue the 7 laws, and it might look like just arguing. It might look like a senseless debate, people with agenda. But the fact is, if you know what side you stand on, either side of Reuven, you're all the more so. That's where you hold and stand in the world. The Zohar also then goes on to make emphasis of the 5th level, where the 5th level is where the kingdom, i.e. our world, our reality, stands on its own right, where it stands on its own 2 feet, and it contains the power of God in our world. Basically, God's presence dwells here. You might call that the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple, as a thing, as a process, as a time, whatever it is. When the kingdom of God is erect, our world stands on its own 2 feet. We no longer suffer setback. We're no longer fighting. We permanently have the revelation of Torah. The judgment has been reversed to kindness or mercy or compassion. That's the 5th level. That's the kingdom of David. That's the Mashiach. That's all the things that we're looking for. Stop the strife. Stop the clipping and let there be momentum to actually build the temple. Now, here's the crown jewel of the class. Mi Elah. Who are these to you? Did you guys notice this? Either when Esav spoke to Yaakov and when Yaakov spoke to Yosef. You guys see this? They say, who are these? You guys, if you want to type in the screen, did you guys notice this? It's a strange language. That's why I ask. Who are these? When Esav says to Jacob. In Hebrew, it's Mi Eile. Mem Yud space Aleph Lamed Hey. Now, Mi Eile is a very Kabbalistic thing. It's the name of God Elokim. The idea of God, let's say, in creation. That when creation is being created by God, he uses the name Elokim 32 times, which represents the number that represents intellect in the creation. 32 pathways of intellect. Represented by the base of Bereshis and the last letter of the Torah, Lamed of Yisrael. Put it together, it spells 32 a number and heart in literal, Lamed Beit. Now this name Mi'ele, as a static meditation, is kind of like breaking up the name of God, lending in vessels, so to speak. And it's more of a map. Don't try to think about it literally. It's a map according to the Sfirot. That you take the Sfirot and you shift and you push. And what happens in the end is that level, that fifth level, Malchus, God's kingdom, becomes erect as a proper name of God. It was missing initially. It was only a C, a Yam. And Bina, understanding, with the highest level that is restored with the Messiah redemption, like the light bulb that goes on, is a full name of God, Elohim. That's called Olam Haba, the world to come. It's fine, but it undergoes a distortion for the sake of creation in this world, and by doing so, it remains only with the word who, me, which is the value 50, which represents the Jubilee. Perfect understanding. But it's concealed. Just like now. We don't have the Jubilee restored. Now the rest of the name of God, Eile, Aleph Lamed Hey, to the name Elohim, Eile, is shifted through creation 6,000 years to eventually join with the kingdom, the 10th level, to make a full name of God, Elohim. By that time, one God is revealed in the universe. And Bina then, understanding, never really underwent the loss. It was always a full name. It was just not fully accentuated. So by the time redemption comes, the kingdom has undergone illumination. That's that level where it stands on its own right, and Bina, or understanding the world to come, can now stand in its own place. It no longer needs to support its children, or the lower levels. I mean, as a parent, we can see this, right? You have your kids. My son Reuven doesn't see me teaching right now. He sees, the Abba that he jumps on as a jungle gym. But he doesn't understand that I have another life of more to being his father than he's aware of. So he only sees like that me, that a part of it. Mem Yud me, who? Now for him, he's very limited. He's a little guy. He's 5 years old. Eventually, he's going to grow up to be Reuven. Now, I will have given him his education, but I didn't really lose anything. I was always me. One day he'll look me in the eye and say, "Oh, that's who you always were." Okay, but by that time he's a grown man. I could look him in the eye and say, "You're done. You're on your own. You're sufficient." That's the kingdom. You now understand Mazal. You can go out in the world and harness the world. You don't need me to guide you along. You don't need me to let you win in basketball anymore. You can now dunk over me. Or at least let's say now we can tango. Now that concept of Mi'ele, this is a meditation to really strengthen oneself. In a lot of ways this could become a meditation. Now what if the other side gets a hold of this? What they do is they use it as a weapon. Right? The Albert Einstein is either understanding the physical universe, and that's a good thing, or it's made to make a nuclear bomb to drop over countries. It's either very good, the knowledge, or it's very bad. Esav learns the very bad. Why? Because he doesn't take it seriously. What his Yetzer Hara says is, we're all people, we're all the same, and that is the perversion of God's kingdom. I am not you, and you are not me. This has nothing to do with Jew, non-Jew. It has to do with the David Katz program and the Ben Plony program. God does not treat me like you, and he never will. This is why you have a name, and he has a name, and they have a name, and their names are not the same. This was this mistake that Moses made. Assuming, okay, we're all obligated in Torah, we all are in this together, socialism doesn't work. It is a capitalist society. God operates with you on the currency that you invest. Esau doesn't understand that. He wants socialism. So Jacob and the knowledge, it's all the same. You're tithing your salt, names of God, cooking a meal, it's all the same. And it's not evil what he's doing. Communism and socialism isn't really evil, but it can be very easily misappropriated for evil. Therefore, Jacob's system is, let's say, the Torah, and it is, hey, you have to take God's name sacred. You have to understand, being the father of the 12 tribes isn't just getting a wife and having a good time and having 12 kids, yada, yada, yada. Totally different viewpoints of life. Are we in it for this world to have a good time? Are we building this world, literally being a partner of creation of this world? Esau and Jacob. Jacob says, I have to father the 12 tribes. This is creation. If I don't, how is there going to be a Sinai and a revelation of Shabbos? The whole world partakes in Shabbos to get to the next world. If you don't learn how to dribble a basketball, good luck trying to dunk. Esau says, who cares if you dribble or dunk? Enjoy the game. Have a nice pair of shoes. Laugh a little. Don't take it so serious. Have a good time. And it doesn't even have to be like a bad thing. Just be cavalier. What's wrong with that? Again, remember we said, don't be excellent. You're not here to be excellent. You're here to be equal and good and have a good time. And you know what? That's not that evil. In fact, I kind of like that myself. Sign me up. Only God has a certain desire and an intent of creating this world. Just because what you say isn't evil doesn't make it right. Everything sounds logically sound. Do your 7, go to heaven. Don't be this, don't be that. It's logically sound until you get the fallacy of the idolatry of what is man, what is God, what is reality. So underneath it all, that's Esau's ego, or you might want to call it his agenda. Jacob says, Esau, you're a good guy, I agree with you, but that's an agenda, and I frankly don't have one. God has an agenda, and I have to do God's agenda. Right? Today Zohari was jumping up on the bed, and you know what? It's not that big of a deal. But you know what? That was her agenda, and my agenda is 4-year-olds that jump on beds might get hurt, and therefore I forbid it. But you know what? As far as she's concerned, she's having a good time. Hey, I agree. You should be able to jump on beds. But God made gravity, and children fall, and they're careless, and they get hurt. It's very simple. Thereby, Jacob says, we must have the 12 tribes. You're going to join me or leave me. Esau says, I'm leaving, goodbye. And that's the status. How do you understand Mi'ela? The name of God, Elohim, split into two. Who are these to you? Esau would say, we're all equal. So when Jacob meets up with Esau, Esau says, hey, Jake, Mi'ela, who are these to you? In a mocking kind of way. You know how so everybody has in their family a certain kind of look, or they all have families. We all know what a family is. And the obnoxious guy that wants to embarrass you, this is what you produced, or this is what you create. That's the mockery of Esau. As if to say, this is what you do. And it's emasculating. Jacob's job is to withstand and say, God gave me, and by definition, God gave me these children. This is what I have become. And there's nothing harder than to stand up to somebody that just doesn't get it. Right? Go try telling the nature of God to somebody that only wants to mock God because they just don't see reality. Or better yet, go tell somebody Kabbalah stuff to a rationalist. Go try. You won't get very far. And it's humiliating. Like, why would you, how did you learn this? Well, Rashi's Ruach HaKodesh, blah, blah, blah. And they'll say, you actually believe that? And it's like different worlds and a contrast. If he doesn't believe it, they don't see what's going on. It's horrible. You look like a fool. And that's what Jacob is up against. I don't want to look like a fool, this guy. Jacob's eventually going to reiterate the same thing to Joseph. He says, Mi'ela, Ephraim and Manasseh, your kids, who are them? Who are they to you? That's the concept we're going to go over as the class really commences, and this is what the main point to stress is Mi'ela. Okay, now for the article. First thing to say is, again, the Ramchal. The Ramchal, in his commentary to Ruth, brings down the redemption of the ger. And the Ramchal is phenomenal because a lot of his teachings, look, everybody likes the Ramchal. I mean, I guarantee you, anybody in this room, if you've heard the name Ramchal, I bet you everyone will raise your hand that you like the guy. No one dislikes the Ramchal. But a lot of people don't get why is he so great. And the answer is because he brings to light these tremendous ideas. And they sound interesting, but to really get it, it's to get the source. What does it mean, the redemption of the ger? That means gerim have redemption. And he brings to light what is the anointment of Mashiach ben David. It's the prophecy that comes from Melchizedek in wisdom. So any Shem follower is going to get to the Ramchal and say, man, Ramchal is all about Shem. And he says things like, Joseph does the will of David, and David does the word of Joseph. We see that David doing the word of Joseph is bigger than Joseph doing the will of David, because Joseph runs the Joseph program, whereas David has free will. Whatever you say, I do. I listen in your voice. That understanding upper realm, that the world of illumination, and I get instruction and counsel from God all the time. By definition, I have no definition. Joseph says, I know what I do, I know what I do, I know what I do, I know what I do. And he does it. And we think he's living a dynamic life, but it's actually very static. Now, he's the king of static electricity. But David is running the power plant. Big difference. These are concepts in the Ramchal. And just for really no sense whatsoever, speaking of the spot blizzard, the Ramchal brings that in the times of Mashiach ben Yosef around Sfat, which is where, trust me, we got our share, the day of snow will be the great day of judgment. So everyone knows it's Sfat, Mashiach ben Yosef, the time that we're in. Well, I guarantee you there will not be a snowstorm like what just happened this Shabbos. Is it the great day of judgment? I don't know, but it certainly feels like it. And again, the daily Talmudic reading, Daf Yomi, the day of the snowstorm, and actually went into a story of Hillel that on the day of judgment went to the study hall, and it was in the month of Tevet, which we're in now, on Erev Shabbos, which was what it was, and 3 feet of snow came outside of nowhere. I mean, that is Mazal 101. Does that have anything to do with this class? Zero. But it's from an inkling of kind of what we're talking about, God's providence. Okay, back to reality. The blessings of Jacob onto the tribes. A lot of people ask, what is the nature of the imagery and the blood and the wine and the teeth and the milk and the donkey and the oil and the daughters and the this and the that. What's very interesting is if you look at Jacob's blessings, in a really, really ultra-realistic reality sense, to understand the blessings, look at Israel today. And I mean that B'nai Reuven, the worldwide Israel movement. which the Gerim are largely responsible for and a part of. Probably more than we know. When you look at the blessings under today's terms, right? The commentary in the Midrash says, the wine and those days will be this and that. Well, part of the Israeli exquisite, luxurious behavior, which sheker or not, they're very into their wine. Now, every country you can say is, but here it really is serious. They grow it. It's ancient. It's history. It's a thing. When you look at what the land represents, and you have a 360-degree panorama view, don't be static, be dynamic. You'll see the blessings, I think, in my opinion, are very accurate and coming true. Okay. Now, here we go. The basic storyline of the Parsha. Jacob comes to Egypt, finds Joseph. Joseph has Ephraim and Manasseh, his two kids. He wants to bless them, and include them into the tribes. The tribes have all kinds of different combinations, whether you want to take the 12 original or break it up and minus Levi and Joseph and include Ephraim and Manasseh. They will be two to Jacob as his own. Under these terms, what you have is the giving over to Joseph, like a fourth level after Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then Joseph within himself has an Ephraim and Manasseh. And we know that Joseph is the harbinger, as the archetype to Mashiach ben Yosef. Just like David is the archetype of Mashiach ben David. And in the Parsha, which is what we're getting at, is that Joseph, and as we're going to illuminate in with the Gerim, this is the DNA of Mashiach ben Yosef and redemption. And it's in here, and we're gonna look at it. But then the thing about Mashiach ben Yosef, just forget about the Parsha for a minute. Now fast forward. Everyone's who's been David and who's been Yosef, and what do you mean Ephraim and what do you mean Manasseh? It's very confusing. But for someone that has been, let's say, been through it, and you want to iron it out, give me the kitzer, not the whole thing. Give me the Cliff Notes. The idea is that Mashiach ben David is, let's say, the proverbial it. That level where illumination, that kingdom is revealed, the strife and struggle are over. That process and time, and that individual, he's got it. He's got it. There's no knocking him down. That's Mashiach ben David. In the meantime, you have Mashiach ben Yosef, who is a person, and it may very well extend into the future Mashiach ben David. But at the same time, it doesn't make any sense to focus on him as in that way. Because at the same token, it's a process in time. Maybe several processes in time. Some longer, some shorter. It's missions, it's people, it's time. It's a member of every family. It's the land of Israel versus the world. It's the process in time. The Vilna Gaon encapsulated probably the most pristine way in a book of redemption called Kol HaTorah. You can find, I think it's like yedidnefesh.com or .org. Do a search on Google for your Kol HaTorah. Look for the website Yedid Nefesh. You can see it and read it in English. It's all about Mashiach ben Yosef, and one read does not get the job done. It's the real deal. It's basically Mashiach ben Yosef in intellect form, contained within writing. Therefore, Manasseh and Ephraim within Yosef, Yosef within David, these are all basically parts of the same story of redemption. But what's unique is that Yosef, and in particular Ephraim and Manasseh's connotation, is the backdrop to redemption of the Ger. And once you get into Ephraim and Manasseh, you're really talking about redemption of the Ger. You're talking about the beginning of redemption, Gog and Magog, the Jubilee, the things that we are to concern ourselves with. Where we can make a difference. And that is that the Noahide thing and the Gerim, and taking the teachings of David and applying them as David as Ben Yosef. Because David is kind of a Ben Yosef that he ran from Shaul. So Solomon and David, as much as they were David, they were also Ben Yosef. They're mutually interchangeable. And here we get into the Gematria. Reuven and Shimon, as Jacob says, Ephraim and Manasseh should be to me like Reuven and Shimon. They're off by one number in Gematria, 725 and 726. That number itself doesn't mean anything on the simple level, only that they're basically the same. Thus, when Jacob says, yours to there shall be to me, we see that there's a precedent. They're basically the same number, and we learn the rules in Remez or hint Gematria that you can be off by a number, whatever it is you're basing it on, and it doesn't ruin it. Okay? And we are going to explain the rest of the parsha through Remez and Drush. As we said, Remez is hint, i.e. Gematria, and Drush is analogy, extrapolation. Midrash basically is Drush. Okay, we're cruising along, and as we said, that the whole point of the redemption of the Ger is, as King David prophesies in Tehillim Psalms, the defeat and victory in time and struggle of Gog and Magog, the wars and the nations, and this is over the 7 laws of Noah. And when you understand what the flavor is, where the emphasis is, and why they use words like the Zohar is a Noah's Ark of spirituality, and when you see all these things, it puts it into context when the Ramchal speaks, or when the Vilna Gaon speaks, or the Zohar speaks, that the Ger is not just a cute little idea, we're going to save some Goyim today. It doesn't work that way, and they're not Goyim. It's not a cute idea. It's not a little funny ideology. It happens to be the redemption, the greatest honor to God, the restoration of Israel proper, those that, bringing Sinai into this world. It's not a little cute story. If anybody's not into cute stories, it's King David. And this is what Tehillim and Psalms are written about. In fact, the righteousness of Psalms is about Noah himself. So when you see the Ramchal and you say, wow, he's really good, but I don't know why I like him so much. This is why. This is what he's on about. And it's not an accident that he talks about Melchizedek and Shem, so forth and so on. Okay, now, Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim and Manasseh, the 2 sons of Joseph. The reason why the Gerim are included in Joseph in particular, and they are also in Judah. Remember, there's always a mutual nature, interchangeable to Judah and Joseph. As we know, the Gerim with David were called, Bnei Yehuda, because they were in the proximity of Judah. But the verse in the Parsha says that Ephraim and Manasseh shall be to Jacob as Jacob's own, but any progeny afterward shall remain in Joseph. Thus Joseph had sons after Ephraim and Manasseh, it would appear. And those sons would not be Jews, but they would be included in Ephraim and Manasseh. Or I think in Ephraim in particular. So you're having Gerim being put out by Joseph himself. Imagine that. He's like a forefather. Putting out real deal Gerim, just like Abraham did. We don't know anything about Isaac doing that, but and Jacob, but Joseph did. Thus, the Gerim fall into the category of Joseph, literally and figuratively. Now that we have this established precedent of Ephraim and Manasseh, and we have the Gematria to say like this: Shimon and Reuven, it doesn't look like are going to be part of redemption. But the Zohar says, they're included. Ephraim and Manasseh are then included through that Gematria, shared Gematria, in the redemption of Shimon and Reuven. Shimon is split up from Levi, and Reuven are the Bnei Reuven. So there's a bigger rule. But Ephraim and Manasseh may be Jews, but they also include the nations of Gerim. The reason why that we can see they include the Gerim is by the connotation of their names literally. And this is the idea this is what SoulMazal is predicated on. The name is the wisdom and mazel within the person. Ephraim's name, by the wisdom of the name, his name is a connotation of fruitful and multiply. The language of Pru Revu. So you can hear it, right? Pru Revu Ephraim. And Manasseh's name comes from the connotation of forgetting the suffering and sins of my father's house. Thus, the redemption of the Ger is essentially those two concepts. Fruitful and multiply of the Ger, removing the sorrow and sinning of the Ger. Fruitful and multiply, get these people out there. If you look at the time of redemption according to the 6 days of creation, where the Gerim have come on to history now, is at the time where God says, be fruitful and multiply. So if the Jews are going to be a light to the nations, and idolatry is going to end, here the Gerim coming out saying, what do? Here we are, right on target. The job is fruitful and multiply. Don't just multiply and just don't be fruitful. Be fruitful and multiply. It's like a newborn baby. What do you do? Just throw him a bottle and say, have a good day, pal? You have to nurture him, bring him along, be there for his needs. You might call that being a light to the nations. You might call it a priest to the nations. You might call it coming out of idolatry. You might call it coming out into the truth. You might call it wanting to serve Hashem. You might call it dropping out of the matrix. Whatever it's worth, hold hands together, grow out there in the world, and that's how you do it. It needs nurtured. So fruitful and multiply is the stage of redemption where Ephraim with the Gerim merge and they start to flourish. There's a rooting taking place. And the Manasseh element is uprooting the suffering and sinning. Now, what does it mean to sin? When you steal the cookie, you are a sinner. You put your hand in the cookie jar and you stole it. You have sinned to God. Now, do you know what avon is? A different language of sin. You're going to laugh when I tell you. You know what happens when the alarm goes off in the morning and you found out how easy it was to hit the snooze button? You remember that happening? You remember what's happening when you're on a diet and you found out that the new grocery store has the cookies and cream ice cream that you like, whereas the old store didn't, and now you know where to get cookies and cream ice cream? Do you remember what it was like when you had high goals and aspirations for something, and the lazy excuse came in, I can always turn it in tomorrow? That concept is avon. This is not a sin. It is not a sin to know where to get good ice cream. It is not a sin to have an alarm clock with a snooze alarm. It is the avon, however, that is in you. And when you really want to fight that temptation, don't you think it would be better just to not know about ice cream? Or whatever Yetzer Hara it is? So it's that knowledge and that residue in you from the original sin. Meaning, I went for the ice cream. And that's fine. Fear of sin, repent, and no problem. But avon is when it's in you and you know how to keep doing it. And you really don't want to. It's not in your interest. But it's just a part of you. That's that Yetzer Hara, the ego, the nachash, all that stuff. Your job, and King David harps about this, get rid of avon. Give me a new nefesh, a new spirit. And ironically, the new spirit really is represented by the ger. The ger path is the way to that new spirit and the new nefesh. The ability to become zealous like Elijah. That's how you get rid of it. And that comes from the infusion of spirituality from the ger. So it makes better. That is the perfection of the world. To do that fruitful and multiply. Thus, to remove the sinning is the avon. All right, this guy came out of idolatry. Remove it from him. Don't make Judaism like idolatry. A, it's wrong for you. B, it's wrong for him. And don't bring in the suffering and say, well, you made it so far, you can just hope to do your 7 and get to heaven. No. This guy came out of the tunnel. He's going for God. You cannot keep them suffering because of a stigma or your own personal interests and agendas. So that's Menashe. Remove it's post Naaman, right? During Naaman is realizing the Ephraim mode. We got to go out there and burst out and post Naaman, get rid of that impurity. Dunk in the Jordan River, get rid of that impurity. Don't keep him down. If you read the story of Naaman, no one kept him down. And Elisha the prophet was the one that facilitated that not keeping him down. This is where Noah really went wrong. Is that it's the Tarmadoi level of a Moloch. The evil of the world, the heir of Ra that say, keep the stigmas, do your 7. Don't, what are you going to do? Go back to idolatry? Well, there's that Miela again. Right? Here's classic Miela. Oh, hey, buddy, how you doing with this Judaism thing? How you keeping those 7 laws? You not going back to idolatry, are you? Miela. There's a Moloch. There's the doubt. There's the emasculation. There's the stigma. You're not understanding where this guy has come from. He left everything behind. He's coming out. He is going forward. He knows the truth. And it needs to be supported. That is love the ger. That is don't taunt the ger. And the inverse is the world's greatest evil. Keep him down. Keep him emasculated. Keep him this. Keep him that. Noah sinned largely because he wanted to just kill that evil. Don't mock God. The only problem is the Gerim come from that mockery. Not that they are the mockery, but the institution, they are, by the decree of God, go through it. Thus the conduit comes through them, meaning it's a head-on collision. You cannot escape Gog and Magog. You must take on evil and confront evil. Noah put it aside. The Messiah eventually will confront it and defeat it. And when it all comes down to it, the suffering's gone. How do we know who qualifies, so to speak? Right? On a logistics level. And this is where the Torah comes in, the Torah of the ger. Look, Sinai. If the guy, person, woman, individual, whatever he is, understands Sinai, the ger and the Shabbat, and the different types of, let's say, goy, where there's goy, ben Noach, chusino Olam, the ger Toshav, ger Tzedek. If you are on the other side of Sinai, you cannot put the suffering and servitude and sinning and stigmas. That is the epitome of evil. That is Miela. That is Amalek. Thus, the command is redemption. There must be redemption of the ger. There must be Ephraim Menashe. There must be the facilitation and growth. The removal of avon. And don't sin. Don't taunt. You must find the love. Understand their names and who they are as people. Understanding the reality of man and reality. Why? Because the more Gerim there are, which the Zohar says that is the greatest honor of God there is, only by that right will you remove your own idolatry of your false religion that you call reality. The ger, for every ger that comes one step back into reality, he is changing your reality. His tshuva is your tshuva. His God is your God. So what duality would you be speaking about now? The Gerim are due to come under the name Elohim, the Rekia of God, doing God's will. Ultimately being able to be free in Torah to say, I'm doing the word of God. The prophetic undertone of I hear what's in the voice of man. Only by the knowledge of reality can this happen. Only then is the full redemption on earth. And only by the ger is it possible. This is the essence of Esav. Mi'ela. Saying to Jacob, who are these to you? What you think you're Israel? What, you're some kind of tzaddik? And what are you going to say? Oh yeah, well I'm a big tzaddik, and you can't do that. And so it's the most emasculating. There's nothing you can say about it. Nothing. So Jacob says, he says, Mi'ela, who are these kids to you? He says, God gave me these kids. Only Jacob didn't totally buy it. Because Joseph got kidnapped, and he could have died, and maybe the story's false. The brothers don't like Joseph. At the end of the parsha, they're still dogging Joseph. Maybe Jacob's bed is not complete. So Jacob then says to Joseph, Mi'ele, who are these to you? I see Yervam ben Nevat, the idolater coming out of Ephraim. Joseph says, these are my kids that God gave me. And there's an arena here. You challenge me with God, I challenge you with God. Who's God to me? God is to me. That's who. It's a reflex. You challenge God is not in me, I'll show you God is in me. This is the essence, basically, of Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef, the redemption is the ger, is to say, what, you have a problem with Gerim? You have a problem with the non-Jews and Shabbos? Any attack against it is just mi'ele. Just saying, just an attack to say, who are these to you? Why would you do that? Why would you think this? It's a Moloch. Mashiach ben Yosef is that power of the honor of God, Kavod Elokim, to say, these are the Gerim of God. Abraham made Gerim. The redemption is from Gerim. The altar of the temple is built by the Gerim. Whether it's Mashiach ben David or Mashiach ben Yosef. The evil eye, the ayin hara, is what yields over everybody. It is the power of the Yetzer, of the evil inclination. There's no greater power of the evil inclination than the evil eye. Right? You see a guy's kids and they look a little funny because they're not your kids. You say, who are these to you? That is idolatry. That is your ego saying, I'm better than you. I'm competing with you. I'm better than you. I can win. Idolatry of man, your false reality. And what does it say? Joseph then stands up to Jacob and says, these are my kids. My kids are your kids. Stop thinking there's a problem with me. Ephraim and Manasseh are messianic. What's your problem? And it says then Jacob's eyes became heavy of old age, of zaken. Zaken we say is zakunim, scholarship. Joseph outscholars Jacob. This is why the brothers said, your servant, our father. And Jacob commences and says, Joseph is above the eye. Ali ayin. To be above is to be armed with mi'ele. Know that you're okay. Know you're doing what you can do. Don't worry about the confrontation. Worry about the meditation. Like King David, you have nothing on me. So that even if you come on me, you're just a peasant doing the will of God. This is God I'm talking to. And God, if you have a problem with me, I'm standing up. At that point, God says, I see my kingdom. And if God's not going to fall down, and I'm not going to fall down, that means it's only the peasant that falls down. David says, Ben Gera, Solomon, get him. God forbid you should ever retreat when things get rough. Keep going. Keep going. Kol HaTorah says, whenever there's problems, don't stop. The redemption of the ger is the essence of redemption. It's the hardest thing to do. Noah didn't so much do it. Abraham did by the power of Shem. Adam, Noah, Abraham. Beginning of the Torah. What is Adam? Adam, David, Mashiach. That's with the progression. And then we say at the end, why? So what? Well, even if it's what you're doing, so why? What do you want to do this for? Because the Shabbos of the Ger is the essence of the blessings of Judah. The essence of creation is to bask in Shabbos with mankind, says the Bahir. It's Sinai. Sinai without Shabbos for mankind is pretty worthless. Shabbos came down on Sinai. This is why Jethro went out to the nations to say, hey, there's more to this story, gang. It was Annie that posed the question, what does it mean your eyes are red-eyed with wine and your teeth are whitened with milk? And it's the Shabbos. Shabbos with just your own little family is saying, my family is okay, but I don't want you. You're weird. What you're really saying is, maybe I'm not good enough for you, and you're going to say, Miele. Who are these to you? And I'm not confident in myself, and I don't want to be attacked by a Molech. So I'm going to attack you. And that's the world. You stay in your backyard, I stay in mine. But what if we open up our families? What if we stop saying Miele? What if I don't look at you and judge your family? What if you don't judge mine? What if we come together even on Friday night? What if I make Kiddush, and I'm happy of heart by the wine? I whiten my teeth by the smile and grin we have of just, how about good company? Like-minded people talking about God? So what is the red-eyed with wine? It's the wine that makes your heart happy. Like Purim and friendship and Shabbos, Passover. What's the white teeth and milk? Smiling. Show your teeth, they become white. It's literal. It's mazel in motion. Why am I smiling? Have you ever seen a ger and a Jew get together and they didn't smile? And maybe if you haven't, maybe you should. Because that's all that there is. Happy heart and smiles. What better place to do it than Shabbat? Which is really the essence of the redemption of the ger. The accentuation of Sinai. The Jubilee year, Bina, understanding, illumination, world to come. The Torah of the ger is the essence of, let's say, the Torah of how to understand. By doing kindness and truth, as that was the Torah that Shem learned on the boat. The redemption of the ger is about kindness and truth. As the power to change Abraham from a rugged figure to the world's greatest chassid that ever lived. And he learned it from Shem, the art of making gerim. And how do you do it? You put it in motion. Don't stay static. Go, lechacha. Go to the land. And then what does Joseph say at the end of the Parsha? God will surely remember you. If God is remembering you, that means you're doing something. God remembering is God amongst man, is waking man up. You'll see the Mazal in motion. You'll see that there are gerim. They're not just boring people, this, that. There are people with a special soul. What do I mean by special? It's like with a sign. Look, I'm a ger. The Jew says, look, I'm a Jew. Oh, that means I should be light, and this should be... We play a part. And that part's not just a little semantics. You are biblical. If you're biblical, you have the soul of the Bible. The story then becomes divine. You're not an accident. You are inspired by God. You're infused with God. If you are, I am, you are. We see each other, what do? We smile and get glad. We see God doing something. So I guess I better do something. You're doing something. Oh, so we're doing something. We're dancing. Because redemption's coming. That is the perception of the divine in motion. That is the honor of God. In any place that you can be a part of such an endeavor, redemption of the ger, at any moment, any place in history, all the more so in the end of time of Mashiach and Yosef, then you are zocha, meritorious, to understand what it is to be a part of the redemption of the ger. And by definition, you are no longer the parties of the world that are taunting the ger, But we all come into the world of the ger by rights of love the ger. Thank you very much. Have a great week. Stay out of the snow, and see you on Wednesday for the rest of the installment of the Thinking Shabbos series. Thank you.